Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Yao, and once again, I have Frank Lopez with me, and we're going to talk about probate. Now, Frank has over 15 years of experience in doing probates. So, Frank, thank you for being with us today.
Hey Gary, how are you?
I'm good. So, let's get started. The most important thing are what is probate?
What is probate? Okay, so probate is it's it's essentially settling the estate of a person who passes away. I'll give
Somebody
you an
dies.
example.
Okay.
Somebody dies, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. Somebody passes away
Mm-hmm.
and they may or may not have had a will.
Okay.
So even if they had a will, if the property was not in a trust, then the property has to go through what's called probate, which is a court process.
Okay.
Um, and it's more common than you would expect because I was talking to actually a good friend of mine, Kevin Sales, with Lawyer's Title, and he was telling me that Lawyer's Title says, and I'm not sure how they came up with this number, but he said that about 75% of all the real estate in the country is held by individuals, not held by a family trust. And what that means is that there's a lot of people that are passing away, and they're passing away basically unprepared, meaning that even if you had a will, if let's say your aunt passes away,
Mm-hmm.
she has a will, she says, hey, the property goes to Gary,
Mm-hmm.
100%,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
You decide, okay, well, my aunt's gone. Property is, would like to sell it. It's not close to me. It's not convenient, so let's sell it. And you call a broker and say, hey, I want to sell this property. And they check the title. Most good agents and brokers will do that. They'll check title to see
Mm-hmm.
how title is held. And they see it's in your aunt's name. And they say, hey, Gary, I'd like to help you, but property is not in your name. It's in
Right.
your aunt's name. And then you explain, well, she passed away. But that's okay. She has a will. And the will says that Gary gets all the 100% of the property.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where it gets complicated. If the property was never, if there wasn't a trust
Mm-hmm.
and the property was not added to the trust,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to go to the local superior court and you have to tell the court, I want to put this property in my name. Here's my
Mm-hmm.
aunt's will,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they put you through the court process. The entire court process, Gary, takes about 9 months to a year.
Wow.
Yes, yes.
So,
So,
Frank, let me put a parenthesis here. Does that
okay,
have you mentioned, let's say it's my aunt. Is that because
right.
it's not my mom or like
No,
does probably happen if it's from like say from parents? My parents pass away and then I'm the child. Do I get to go to do I have to go to probate as well?
yes, and that's a great question, Gary. It doesn't matter. It could have been your parents.
Okay.
It could have been a family friend. It doesn't really matter. What
Mm-hmm.
does matter is the lack of a trust. So going back to what Lawyer's Title was saying, 75% of most of the real estate in the country is held by individuals like your aunt,
Right.
not in a trust. If it were in a trust, two
Mm-hmm.
things would happen. One is the trust would explain exactly how that person's estate would be settled. It would say Gary gets 100% of the property. Gary gets to sell the property if he chooses to, and you basically provide that to a title company, and they'll see it and they'll say, "Okay, you're Gary." Even though the property, well, no, the property. I was going to say the property won't be in your aunt's name; it'll be in the Gary's aunt family trust name.
Mm-hmm.
And once they get a copy of that trust, they would say, "Gary, you're good to go." But because there's so many people that don't have their real estate in a trust, even with a will, Gary, you would still have to go through probate.
That is
So
interesting.
yeah, it is. And most people are under the assumption that if you have a will, you're covered. There's no you're is if you decide to sell that property, you're good to go. That is not the case at all. So here's what happens. You go to the
Mm-hmm.
court and you petition the court to probate the property.
Mm-hmm.
Probate her estate, basically. They'll ask for a copy of the will, even if you didn't have a will. Let's say you were the only heir, Gary. There are no
Yes.
other heirs, and there's no will.
Right.
So the court will ask those questions. Now you'll have to fill out a very, very detailed petition. It's an application for the court so that they can see, okay, you're the only heir. Um, you petition the court. You actually have to go in front of a judge, Gary, and yes, and you have to say, I'm the only heir. There are no other heirs. I'd like to sell this property. That's starting the process. The whole process will, from a cost standpoint, if you were to not involve an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
the entire cost you'd have to pay a little close to $2,000 in court fees.
Out of pocket.
Um, out of yes,
Oh
upfront.
man.
Uh,
Okay.
so if you now let's say you didn't want to handle it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is it's a real project. I mean, I just told you it's going to take a year. On top of that, if you're also doing it without an attorney, it'll probably take you longer because you'll probably make a lot of mistakes. Um, and it's going to be very time consuming. Now, here's why some people prefer to do it on their own.
Mm.
It's not
Before,
cheap.
let me stop you for this second.
Yes.
In that void, in that space where I'm trying to claim this property,
Mhm.
um, let's say that the property has a mortgage. Who pays for it? Let's say, can I pay for it? Can I? How about property taxes? Do I get to pay for it? What happens
Okay.
if I have no access to that?
Okay. So another great question. First of all, if there's a mortgage, it would have to be, let me back up a little bit. Depends on the type of mortgage. If it's a standard mortgage, yeah, you have to keep paying for it
Right,
because if the entire process takes almost a year, you can't not pay for the
right.
next year on the mortgage. So yes, you would have to cover it. Now, let's assume for a second that it's a reverse mortgage, which we come across a lot
Yeah.
because when somebody passes away, the assumption is that the person could and likely is elderly.
Yes.
If they're elderly, we come across reverse mortgages all the time. In the reverse mortgage case, there usually isn't a monthly payment. That said, I always tell my clients, do not let the lender know that your family member passed away because the minute that no, let me explain why.
Uh-huh.
The minute that the reverse mortgage company finds out that that person passed away,
Uh-huh.
they will call the loan due.
Yes. The
They,
entire balance.
yes, they will call the loan due. And what they'll do is they'll give you a chance to sell it, but what they're doing is they're basically saying, "Hey, Gary, thank you for letting us know that your aunt passed away. So now you have to pay us off. We're going to give you 3 months, 6 months, depending on the lender. They usually will give you about 6 months, but here's where I recommend you not let them know.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have enough pressure on you or just you have enough to do already. You don't need letters from the reverse mortgage company saying, "Hey, Gary, what's going on? Why is this taking so long? Why haven't we been paid?
Where's our money?
Where's our money?"
Yeah.
And by the way, we if by a month six, if you haven't actually paid us off, we'll file a notice of default. And they do.
Yeah. I have seen that.
They have no qualms about filing a notice of default against Gary
Mhm.
because your aunt's gone. So
Yeah.
and your aunt was their client. Gary's not.
I'm
So
nothing to them in their eyes. Like, well, they're taking the property that they
yeah,
went in contract
yeah,
with my aunt, not with me. I'm nothing in this equation.
right. So
Hmm.
so they want that paid off right away. So I would not let them know. They'll find out anyway once the loan is going to be paid off if the property is sold.
Right.
Um, but like I said, you just don't need that hanging over your head. So Property taxes, typically that's paid at the sale as well, unless you plan on keeping the property, then yes, you want to put you want to keep the property taxes paid up to date as well.
I see. Now
And we
going
can,
back to the court, let's say
yes,
you say that it takes if I hire a lawyer 9 months to a year. If I don't hire a lawyer, I do it myself. Yeah, let's say 2 years. And
um, I've seen it go longer when you don't hire an
oh
attorney.
oh gee,
But
okay.
I've seen, but I have clients that have done it on their own. The only reason they would do it on their own is because an attorney will charge them approximately 3%, and it's a formula. It's set by the court, but it's approximately 3% of the value of the estate. So let's say the house is worth $700,000.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that there's $300,000 in other assets.
Okay,
So you could and would be paying approximately 3% of $1 million as part of the legal fee to have an attorney handle that for you.
that's
And by
thirty
the way,
thousand.
30,000. And by the way, that's set by the court. And the interesting thing, Gary, is the attorney doesn't uh, bill or the attorney doesn't set that. The court does because of that. And this is where it gets, where you really have to do your homework.
Uh-huh.
You could hire a an injury attorney. Let's say you were involved in a car accident a year ago and you had an attorney that handled that for you. You were happy with the job they did. You can go to that same attorney, and just like you, Gary, are licensed in the state of California, and you could sell any probate property.
Right.
You could. You're licensed,
Yes.
but but you're it wouldn't be pretty. And
No.
and by
Yeah.
that and by that I mean you'll get the job done, but because it's such a different type of transaction,
Mm-hmm.
it just will be very complicated. A lot of mistakes will be made. Same thing holds true for attorneys. If you
Mm.
go to an attorney, accident attorney, divorce attorney, whatever, and you ask them, hey, can you handle this probate for me? There's no reason why they couldn't do it. But if that's not what they do, then it will be, again, it may not be pretty.
Look for a
I
specialized attorney in your case, right?
yes, yeah.
Right.
You really want to work with a probate attorney, somebody that specializes in what's called probates trust and estates attorney that specializes in probate. It's a very niche type of attorney.
Got
If
it.
I'm not mistaken, less than 5% of the attorneys in the state of California are probate attorneys. So there's a 95% chance that you may be dealing with somebody who doesn't know it. They'll still be able to do it, but it will take much longer. And mistakes are made, and I see it happen regularly. And it's going to cost you the same whether you go to a specialist
Mm-hmm.
or you go to somebody who just, who is new to the process.
Dang. So less than 5% of attorneys deal with probate. Frank, our time is up, but this is a very interesting conversation. We should continue doing this because I don't think we covered nearly just the tip of the iceberg on this topic.
No, no, you're right. We all we did is talk about why you would need to get or why you'd have to go through probate. There's so much more to be discussed. So yes, we should follow this up with another call and talk a lot more about this because there's a lot more to this topic that we should discuss.
Awesome. So, Frank, if people want to get a hold of you to ask you about probate or any other questions regarding real estate, how can they get a hold of you?
They can go to Google and just look for Frank Lopez, the Frank Lopez Broker Group, or they can always call me at 626-289-1111.
Awesome. You guys got it. Well, thank you, Frank. I will talk to you next time.
Okay, Gary, I appreciate you having me on the call.
Bye bye now.
All right, bye-bye.